Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to our virtual town hall today. I'm going to go ahead and pull this down. My name is Tisa Rodriguez. I am the chair of the Riverside County Democratic Party. I'm very excited to be back with you. I've been gone for a couple of weeks, but I am incredibly excited about this topic. So what we're going to do today is we are going to talk about the Green New Deal. It's going to be really, really exciting because this is critically important, and I'm going to make a couple of key introductions right now. Liam O'Mara is a history professor from a working class family of union laborers. He took on a lot of debt to finish his PhD and has taught for 12 years, focusing on the history of ideas, and is the Democratic nominee for U.S. Congress. We also have with us a very special guest, Kylie Kirkwood. Kylie Kirkwood is, one second, oh my God. Kylie Kirkwood is the coordinator for Sunrise Rancho Cucamonga, a youth-led movement fighting for climate change in the Inland Empire. She received her bachelor's degree in sociology from UCLA in 2019 and will be starting graduate school in the fall to pursue a master's in social work. Gayle McLaughlin is with us, and she is a former two-term mayor and city council member in Richmond, California, which she led through a significant progressive transformation. Gayle has never taken a dime of corporate money for any of her campaigns and ran as a corporate-free candidate for the lieutenant governor in 2018. She currently serves as the steering committee for the California Progressive Alliance, and also is running for Richmond City Council to continue the work she is doing to fight for local people in the Bay Area. Liz Lavertu is also with us. She is a mother, a volunteer, and chair of the Spring Valley Community Planning Group. She has been an active volunteer in her community for over 20 years, and she's running for state assembly to advocate for working families and pushing for policies that will help shape our education, healthcare, and environment. 71st Assembly District is in East County, San Diego, Idlewild, Anza, Valley Vista, and more. Shaul Rosen-Rager is a native of Israel. Shaul made his home in the Inland Empire in 1997 and lives just south of Hemet. He is an alumni of CSU-SB, and a year and a half ago he started a local chapter of Citizens Climate Lobby in the 42nd District, which now encompasses 30 members strong. He started a climate action committee in the Santa Margarita group of the Sierra Club, which organized in September 2019 the climate strike in Temecula, which was critically important and made a really big difference in our area. Kate Schwartz will not be able to be with us, but she's fantastic. She's the director of the Fallbrook Regional Healthcare District. She's running for California State Assembly in the 75th Assembly District, which encompasses parts of inland San Diego County's North region, the southernmost reaches of the Inland Empire, and she will return with us very, very soon. So what we're going to do is we're going to go very quickly to a couple of introductions. We're going to go first to Mr. Liam O'Mara. The next person will be Kylie, and then we'll go from there. We want to hear from all of our incredible guest speakers so we can hear their thoughts on the Green New Deal. This is going to be fantastic. Liam.
All right, so hello again. Liam O'Mara for the 42nd Congressional District. And we have 5 people speaking to you today on what we can do about global warming. But that presupposes a problem, doesn't it? Well, yes, it does. That there are still so many people trying to pretend there is no problem represents, for me, a failure in our entire society. I mean, heck, the Siberian Arctic recently hit 100 degrees Fahrenheit, which is crazy. We're losing permafrost, releasing trapped methane, and the consequences of that are horrifying. But most voters are never going to have the science background fully to understand the carbon cycle or how we've disrupted, just like most are never going to pay attention to policy minutiae when making electoral choices. That is why we have people in the media and in public life in the first place. But many politicians and talking heads have invested countless hours in sowing doubt, in blanket denial, in childish evasions. This shows a profound lack of responsibility and leadership and is deeply destructive. Here we stand, all of us here, ready to listen to the science and to make public policy accordingly. Much of our media, sadly, won't acknowledge that at all. It'll say we're being sheep, doing what we're told, blah, 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 bah. It's honestly infuriating. So instead of laying out the case, once again, for recognition of how the carbon cycle works or why the Earth is warming, I'm going to take it for a given that it is, because it is, and talk about how we can address it without going broke, without ditching our air conditioners or banning cow farts or any of the other cheap lies that you get out of the Charlie Kirks of the world. So let's start with the biggest objection that a lot of conservatives will make to this sort of thing: spending. Implementing a Green New Deal will cost a lot of money. So where does that come from? There are 4 parts to this, and yes, it actually is easily affordable. First, we fix the tax code so that those who benefit most from our economy are paying a larger share. As I've noted before on this show, cutting taxes on the rich lowers our pay, raises our taxes, slows innovation, and depresses the whole economy. It's also deeply unfair since the economy is structured to give some people an advantage, and those with such advantages should help others to rise up. So that's a small part of it. 2, we set a price for carbon emissions, as many corporations and financial papers like The Economist have been arguing for years. A carbon tax adds stability to markets and fairly accounts for the social prices that we're paying for the pollution. Shaul's going to talk a good bit about that later on in this program. 3, we remember that investments bring returns to the whole economy, leading to rising revenues for the state as a whole. So it pays itself back. I mean, infrastructure investments alone are some of the best, giving a 3-to-1 return in productivity boosts. And 4, we have to stop thinking about the federal budget as in any way akin to a household budget, because that's not how they work. The purpose of taxation is not to pay for the federal spending, but to incentivize our work. The US government doesn't need our money to pay for this stuff anyway, and never has. We'll be talking about that in next week's topic with economist Fadl Kaboub. Now, in the rest of my section here, I'm going to spend laying out what the Green New Deal is when it was introduced as an initiative in Congress, so that we know it doesn't involve banning ice cream or whatever, and we can see the different parts that are involved in this. To do that, we have to remember its purpose and the reason for that name. This is intended to be a second New Deal. The goal is to use the needed spending to address climate change in order to solve the many pressing needs that we've had for generations now, putting America back on track with the rest of the rich world. Again, those of you who've tuned into these before and listened to my rambles know that I talk a lot about our declining economy in the US, our fall to 17th in living standards, our having the 35th healthiest population in the world, our failing public schools, our crumbling derated infrastructure, and on and on. I mean, this is obviously a big issue for me. And the Green New Deal is a way to turn this whole ship around. Right? There are 10 basic parts to the proposal, all of which require dedicated legislation. So people freaking out about this miss the fact that it wasn't even a bill. It was a way to lay out, these are priorities that we as a society should be moving toward anyway. And now let's start talking about each of those pieces. So I'm going to go through each of these just briefly. Number 1, we need to guarantee all Americans a job with a family-sustaining wage, with adequate family and medical leave and paid vacations, and raise the retirement stability and standards for all by shoring up Social Security. As I've said many times, good wages for all and a pension are not charities. They're literally the lifeblood of the real economy. Americans already work 400 more hours per year than Germans and have far less to show for it. We need to change that. Number 2, we need to ensure that all Americans have high-quality health care, adequate and affordable housing, economic security, and access to clean water and air, as well as affordable and healthful foods. Again, this is not just a charity. A healthier and more secure population is more productive, is more innovative, engages in less crime, and can sustain and nurture healthier families. Go figure. Number 3, we need to provide better training and education for the jobs of tomorrow. This includes fixing our public schools and offering tuition-free trade schools, public colleges, and universities. The US already depends upon importing people with good educations because not enough Americans are trained for the high-tech factory jobs, hospitals, or much else that we have in this country today. The cost of training and education needs to come down so that more of us can actually jump into that economy. And we're not going to get very far in a 21st century global economy if we're not taking care of our people at all. Number 4, we need to be able to meet 100% of power demand in the US through clean, renewable, and zero-emission energy sources. This can take a variety of forms so long as it meets those criteria and we stop spending money on dirty fossil fuels. Number 5, we need to repair and upgrade infrastructure around the country. I'll give some specific examples in a moment, but consider also that forests, parks, and wetlands should be considered a part of our national infrastructure, given their role as carbon sinks. We should also include our internet infrastructure here, not only for its polluting aspects in its current form, but because of we're falling really behind the rest of the rich world, which is costing us time and money. I think a lot of us have seen this during this pandemic, being trapped at home, just how crumbling our infrastructure really is for internet. 6, we need to build and or upgrade to energy efficient, distributed, and smart power grids. This will let us ensure affordable access to electricity across the country, to store it cheaply and reliably for downtimes. And I'll stop the constant waste. A lot of our power is wasted through outdated transmission methods and through an inability to deal well with fluctuations in demand, which again costs us money and productivity every year. 7th, we need to upgrade existing buildings and ensure that new ones we put up are able to achieve maximal energy efficiency, water efficiency, safety, affordability, comfort, and durability. A lot of our structures here really do not use energy effectively. 8th, we need to overhaul transport systems to eliminate pollution and greenhouse gas emissions as much as is technologically feasible. This is where a lot of people sort of freaked out about this. Oh my God, they're going to ban airplanes. I won't be able to travel anymore. No, we're talking about how can we improve airplane engines so they're not the massive polluters that they are. I mean, we don't need to be using ancient technologies at this point to drive a lot of our transport, and we are. We should be investing in zero-emission vehicle infrastructure and manufacturing, clean, affordable, and accessible public transportation, and where possible, high-speed rail links. 9th, we need to spur massive growth in clean manufacturing and removing pollution and greenhouse gas emissions from industry as much as is technologically feasible. Again, there's a lot of work that has to go into this, and all we're asking is that Americans step up and innovate again. Do you guys remember Kennedy's call to innovate? Let's put a man on the moon. Let's dream big. We need to do that again. That's all we're asking for here. 10th, we need to work with farmers and ranchers to reduce or eliminate pollution and greenhouse gas emissions from the agricultural sector, at least as much as is technologically feasible. And no, that doesn't mean replacing all your hamburgers with soy patties or whatever else they're saying on the internet. Each of these areas will require legislation. So the fact that the non-binding Green New Deal resolution couldn't pass with support even from Democrats represents to me a profound lack of vision and leadership, and a political class that does not think we deserve good jobs, clean air, or to see our children grow up in a world that can sustain animal life. This to me tells us what we need to do. If someone prefers corporate cash to working for the betterment of American lives, they shouldn't be in Congress. We created for the United States a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, so that liberty and happiness could flourish. What we have instead is a neo-feudal corporate oligarchy which prefers to chase short-term profit and sock that money away overseas while Americans starve. Why is that tolerated by any patriot? 3 generations in a row, Generation X, the millennials, and now the Generation Z that I'm teaching, have lower expectations than their predecessors. This is not the American dream that our parents fought and died to create. And pursuing a Green New Deal is about restoring the promise of America, and that deserves our support. Thank you for your time.
Okay, so next we're going to go to Kylie Kirkwood and then to Gayle McLaughlin. Hey, Kylie. I want to hear your thoughts.
Cool. So let me go ahead and share my screen really quick. I have some slides for everybody. All right. Okay, awesome. So hi, everyone. Again, my name is Kylie Kirkwood, and my pronouns are she, her, and I am the Hub Co-Coordinator for Sunrise Rancho Cucamonga. So first I want to tell you all a little bit about what we do. So Sunrise Rancho Cucamonga was established in 2019. Myself and my co-coordinator, Marissa Flores, decided that we need to do something about climate change and the climate crisis. And we both grew up in the Inland Empire, so we were like, let's start here. Because at the time, we felt like there wasn't a lot of conversation surrounding what's happening with the environment, specifically out here. So we are a youth-led movement uniting to fight the climate and economic crisis in the Inland Empire. We focus on storytelling as a mode of sharing the issue of climate change. So I'm not sure if anybody can relate to this, but I can definitely relate to hearing about climate change in terms of like parts per million and like polar bears and things that just were like very far away from me and very abstract. But with Sunrise, we focus on telling our story, sharing with people how climate change is affecting our lives. And I know myself included, folks in the Inland Empire, we are directly affected by climate change. For example, just the wildfires in our area. So we all have something to lose to climate change. But we also know that not everyone is equally affected. So that's why Sunrise Rancho Cucamonga and Sunrise Movement broadly prioritizes working with other movements. So for example, that's why we have shifted our focus a lot to how we can collaborate with the movement for Black Lives right now, mostly because we know that racial justice is environmental justice, because Black, Brown, Indigenous, other people of color are disproportionately affected by climate change and are seeing the effects most dramatically even right now. So I know that folks are going to be covering this a little bit more in depth, but I wanted to just quickly go over some things about why we need a Green New Deal in the Inland Empire and some things that should be addressed. So according to the American Lung Association State of the Air Report in 2019, San Bernardino and Riverside County are the two counties with the worst air pollution in the nation, which is wild because I grew up in the Inland Empire my whole life and I never knew that I was breathing in literally toxic air. So that's a problem, of course. San Bernardino and Riverside County also received a failing grade in regard to the quality of our air. This is on top of a growing lack of food security, a lack of food security or otherwise food insecurity in Inland Empire, as well as affordable housing. Also, I really wanted to mention that if you live in the greater Los Angeles area, like I do here in Rancho Cucamonga, we are occupying stolen Tongva land. And I mention this because the Green New Deal is really about not only repairing our relationship with our planet, but also repairing our relationship with Indigenous, Black, Brown, and other marginalized groups. So those people need to be at the forefront of this transition because they already hold generational knowledge of what our planet looks like pre-industrialization. Like I said previously, too, these people need to be at the forefront because these groups are the ones that are currently being most affected and will continue to be most affected by climate change. So the picture to the left, it says, IE Lungs Over Profit, World Asthma Day. That is a banner drop that Sunrise Movement, along with CCAEJ and My Generation campaign here in the IE, hung over a freeway in San Bernardino in celebration in quotes, of World Asthma Day and our terrible air quality. So I'll go ahead and end with thinking about what our strategy is to win the Green New Deal. We have kind of a two-tiered strategy. Our first one is utilizing people power. So we know that fossil fuel executives and their wealthy politicians have money, and we know that we don't, right? Most people do not have money, especially people who are in Sunrise Movement who tend to be young. We're a youth-led movement. So we're all like high school and college kids. We don't have the money to go up against these fossil fuel executives. But what we do have is people power. So like I mentioned previously, centering our message around storytelling makes climate change less abstract and really helps everybody to realize that climate change is everybody's problem, and we all have something to lose to climate change. So that's a really big tactic for us. Our general goal with People Power is to mobilize young people across the nation. So our tactics include mass strikes, protests, sit-ins, banner drops like the one that I just showed on the previous slide, and things of that nature. We also have a big focus on community education, which if you are native to Inland Empire, you know that we oftentimes don't really talk about climate change in our area, or the simple fact of the air pollution that we have, like I mentioned earlier. So the second part to this strategy to win the Green New Deal is political power. So we need to ensure that we elect Green New Deal champions to every level of office. I do want to note that Sunrise Movement is nonpartisan, so we're neither Democrat or Republican or part of the Green Party or whatever. And we also acknowledge the fact that history has shown us that revolution really doesn't start from the top down, right? It's starting from the bottom up. And so we have a big emphasis on grassroots organizing within our movement, but we also recognize the system that's in place and the importance of trying to reform that system, right? So we need, like I said, Green New Deal champions at every level of office. And in doing this, Sunrise often endorses candidates. So Sunrise Rancho Cucamonga in particular has endorsed Liam O'Mara and also Abigail Medina. So I think it kind of goes a long way when thinking about who to vote for if we have these climate organizations that are really highlighting these Green New Deal champions for voters. So yeah, that's all that I wanted to share with everybody today. And I will pass it to the next speaker. Let me go ahead and stop sharing my screen. Okay, cool.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kylie. Please don't mind my co-host. Gayle McLaughlin and Liz Lavertu are next.
Okay, thank you, Tisa. I'm Gayle McLaughlin, and I'm the former mayor of Richmond, California, and I'm currently running to serve on the Richmond City Council again. Now, I want to start out by sharing my website in case I forget to do so later. So to learn more about my campaign, go to gayleforrichmond.org. That's GAYLEFOR Richmond.org. Now, onto the Green New Deal. I fully support a Green New Deal to transition the economy from fossil fuels to clean, renewable energy. And I believe that only by building working class power and waging class struggle from below can we save the planet. Climate change is a class problem and was created by large corporations who put profit before people. And these big players do not want to forfeit their profits, so we cannot depend on them to solve our problems. Climate solutions need the energies of all of us as activists, and we need to appeal to the material interests of the working class. Of course, it's essential that we listen to the science. That is key, and we need educational campaigns to make the science clear. But in addition to all this, we need an actual struggle for power, taking power away from the fossil fuel industry. The rich and the corporations need to be defined as the enemy of the planet and our climate, and they need to be heavily taxed to pay for the transition. We need the whole world to be in solidarity and working together for this transition to succeed. In Richmond, we are home to a giant oil refinery, the Chevron Richmond Oil Refinery, and they are the largest greenhouse gas emitter in the state of California. And of course, along with greenhouse gas emissions, a lot of co-pollutants are emitted, which have harmed our community for decades. So the effect of climate change on our air quality is really important in Richmond. And contrary to what happens in other cities without refineries, 85% of greenhouse gases in greenhouse gas emissions in Richmond are of industrial origin, and most of that comes from Chevron. Only 15% of our air emissions come from actual transportation. I know for most cities, transportation makes up the bulk of the emission. emissions. But in Richmond, the community is not the key culprit for the pollution and dirty air generated in our city. One industrial entity is responsible for most of it, and this is likely true for other refinery cities as well. So many of us are mobilizing people and calling for the decommission of refineries in a transitional way. We think it's time to end the fossil fuel economy and to transition to a sustainable, renewable energy economy. We can do it gradually and reduce the 250,000 barrels of oil currently processed in Richmond every day. We want a gradual reduction during a 10 to 15 year span to arrive at a total closure by 2035, accompanied by retraining programs for current employees and massive cleaning up of these liberated areas, and a fair share taxation must be imposed on the oil industry during this period. The City of Richmond grants the refinery a business license to operate in our city, and this gives us some negotiating power in bringing this oil giant to the table. Additionally, mass mobilization and community education will be needed, along with other measures, to bring these oil executives to an agreement. Our mobilizing must also target elected officials in the Bay Area and the state of California who have made major accommodations to industrial air polluters and force them to stand for environmental and climate justice. Of course, we all have individual responsibilities to reduce pollution, so it's essential we all drive less, and important we continue to encourage and mobilize residents to go solar, to use public transit, to get electric vehicles, to weatherize our homes, and so on. Yet we absolutely need to find ways to eliminate the #1 source of local pollution in refinery cities, which are the oil companies in Richmond, Chevron. There are other environmental justice issues in my city as well. I'm in District 5, running in District 5, and we have the toxic Zeneca site there, which embodies the legacy of Richmond's heavy industrial past. The impact of this highly toxic site on residents throughout the district and on the San Francisco Bay is of major concern. And I've advocated and will continue to advocate for a comprehensive cleanup of this site where 100 years of heavy manufacturing took place, leaving dangerous toxins behind. So we have some major local challenges, but we have some incredibly beautiful sites to protect and highlight in the Bay Area and beyond as well. One such site is Richmond's Point Mulati, one of the last remaining undeveloped headlands in the San Francisco Bay Area. And many of us are fighting to keep this beautiful site on our shoreline ecologically balanced and free from harmful development. And we're instead proposing to turn it into a public park with healthy, sustainable development. This is all part of the Green New Deal. We have to stop the bad and preserve the good. And we've already put many good policies in place in our city, and we think we can serve as an example for other cities. For example, we championed solar and became #1 in the Bay Area for solar installed per capita several years ago. We also became a leader in the realm of other green policies, including our green job training program, a ban on glyphosate, joining a community choice energy program, and other initiatives. So my run for City Council is to strengthen all these policies as we go forward and to connect with communities throughout the Bay Area and the state of California. Now, I'd like to quickly segue to the Bay Area in general, because some folks in my county, Contra Costa County, have just recently put together a Bay Area Green New Deal. And I'm going to be engaging with them more specifically on Richmond issues, but I want to say this is an excellent plan, and I think it has relevance for our entire state. It has 10 critical policy areas that include clean energy and a zero carbon economy by 2030, green jobs creation and a just transition for workers, clean transportation, clean air, water, and waste, sustainable agriculture, affordable sustainable housing, social justice for frontline communities, ecosystem restoration and conservation, climate adaptation and emergency planning, very important, research and development also. So if you want to see this draft plan, Please, it's probably best to email me, and I could forward your email to the people in my county working on this. So you could email me at gayleforrichmond@gmail.com. Again, GAYLEFOR Richmond@gmail.com. So let's remember, corporate polluters through their money in politics equals continuation of pollution and the climate crisis. That's why I take no corporate money, never have and never will. Getting corporate money out of our electoral field is how we get to the point of governing for the good of the people and not in the service of corporations. So let me end by saying we can create an incredible Green New Deal, but we must do it by building coalitions. That is what we've done in Richmond and what we'll continue to do. And that is what we're doing in the California Progressive Alliance, the CPA. I'm on the steering committee of the CPA, and we are reaching out to our allies and individuals throughout the state and encouraging them to build and strengthen alliances in their local regions. Our role in CPA is to help build a statewide coalition on all our progressive issues and to help raise up local coalitions with a higher profile. Every month or so, we do some online community exercises with panel discussions on various issues, especially health, social justice, and the environment. We want to make sure that our recovery from COVID-19 doesn't bring us back to pre-COVID days, but pushes us forward. You can check out CPA's website at californiaprogressivealliance.org. So many progressive issues intersect. Our hope is that we all intersect our energies, our hopes, and our dreams, and that we share our policy ideas and initiatives locally, statewide, nationwide, and ultimately globally. When we unite, we have the power of working class people everywhere to create a global Green New Deal and solve our problems together for ourselves and for generations to come. Thank you very much.
And thank you so much, Gayle, for so ably representing the city that my grandmother called home for many, 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 many years.
Oh, wonderful.
You know, as a great gardener and environmentalist herself, she would have been so happy to hear everything you're working on. So I'm going to go next to Liz Lavertu, and I sincerely apologize if I'm saying it wrong, but Shaul. So Liz first. All right?
Wonderful. Hi, everyone. I hope that you guys are having a great day. I just want to say happy Pride Month and day for everybody in San Diego who's out there celebrating. When we were planning the show and talking about Green New Deal, I was like, how am I going to talk about Green New Deal for only 5 minutes and really get the point across? So I'm going to try the best that I can. But prior to COVID, here in California, we were already facing like serious structural challenges, that the pandemic just exacerbated, housing shortages, increase in homelessness, high levels of wealth inequality, challenge to working families when it comes to medical and childcare, and then just negative environmental impacts on underserved communities. So now, looking at it in the eyes of pandemic, we're looking at things. I guess maybe I should first point out, and I think Liam did at the beginning, that the Green New Deal, a lot of people, when they think about Green New Deal, they're like, oh, the environment. But it's not just the environment, it's environment, the economy, and social justice and equity that we look at. It's pretty much the whole structure of how we want our communities to be. So, we're looking at schools, most likely all of them in California, not going back in the fall. They're being distance learning. And we're looking at small businesses playing red light, green light with us, like, oh, you're open, you're not open, you're open, you're not open. And, that's great because, health is an important factor, for our state. And COVID is a serious pandemic that we're facing. But as a state, we need to be focused on, assisting the people. When we get CARES Act money and when we get money from the federal government, we need to be focused on putting that money to the people and to the small businesses of California. Small businesses in California make up 50% of the workforce. If small businesses fail, our economy fails. So we need to be focused on putting our dollars to those who need it most and who support us most. We don't want to be giving that money to corporations. We don't want to be giving that money to investors. We want it to be going to the people. And this isn't a democratic issue. This is a people issue. You know, if you're not a corporation, then this is what we need to get on board with right now to make sure that our economy recovers and that those that are the most effective are the ones that are being helped. So with that being on the side, so in January, pre-pandemic, Rob Bonta up in the state assembly puts out this amazing Assembly Bill 1839 that was California's Green New Deal. And we were so excited, you know, about this Green New Deal. It was something that, you know, us Californians could really get behind. You know, it focused on all the good things that we needed it to. But, you know, with COVID hitting, a lot of Assembly bills are being pushed to next session. So this one has been a little bit repurposed, more of like a COVID recovery deal. And it made into an urgent bill as well. So it hasn't had its first reading in the assembly yet. It's been amended a few times, and I know that they're working with labor right now to ensure that, you know, all the correct verbiage gets into the bill. But what that's actually going to do is it's going to make sure that the COVID funds do not go to places where we don't want them to go to. So it wouldn't go to any projects that continue the current levels of greenhouse gas emissions. It wouldn't give any of the money to the fossil fuel industry. It would give preference to projects that do lower emissions when there is an absence of a project of zero emission. And it would build paid apprenticeships with prevailing wages and project labor agreements to get people back to work here in California and doing it with thriving wages. So those are all really good things that we should be looking at in the assembly right now. Whether or not it's going to get its first reading in the assembly this year or be pushed to 2021, we don't know yet. I've been keeping a close eye on it. So, you know, look at that one with me. That is AB 1839. Another one that we're looking at, another bill that is kind of being repurposed. Again, you know, I believe Bonta was the original author of the bill, is AB 3256. So that one also, you know, people are looking at it as a COVID one that is focused on economic recovery. It's focused on funding for wildfire prevention, safe drinking water, drought preparation, flood prevention. You know, it does really need to build out more on the air quality. I don't think that that bill goes far enough with that. So, you know, maybe we can get some amendments in there to focus on those things before it goes to the assembly floor. But it really looks at the recovery resources going to workers in the community and the people and not the corporations and investors. So that's something that I like about AB 3256. Again, I don't think that one's coming up right now. I think it's already been pushed to 2021. So that's why it's important to look at leaders who are running for state senate right now and the state assembly to ensure that these people can revive these bills and push them forward and put in the amendments to make sure that everything is thought through, especially for our rural communities too. With wildfire prevention, that is huge. I know for like a second there, we were freaking out about the budget when it came, you know, to wildfire prevention. Newsom came through with some money, but I think, you know, we need to look at it and get a little bit more funds going there. Some of the things that California has done well so far, like in 2013, we put the cap and trade into place. So far, we've already generated over $5 billion in revenue that has gone towards environmental initiatives in underserved communities. So that's really exciting. But I think we can go a little bit further and implement like additional oil extraction fees and taxes to generate more revenue, and then get it to where, you know, we're leveling out the cost of renewable energy with the fossil fuel industry so that, you know, we can look at it more as our tax dollars going to something where we can have the zero emission future. I mean, our goal our goals have been stated in the past that we want to be there at 2045. I think we can get there sooner. I really do. I think with the right Green New Deal legislation put in place, especially during the time of COVID, where we can make them urgent and they go into effect right away, I think we can go to a zero emission future sooner than 2045. I mean, we beat lowering our emissions to our 1990s goals earlier. I think we did that 4 years early than we thought we would do it. So I don't see why we can't do that now, especially with a lot of people working from home. I know that we're not the biggest contributor, our cars, but they do, you know, make a difference in saving our environment. Those are just a few things that I can think of right offhand. But we do need, we do need great people at the state assembly who are willing, to focus on these things. Another thing that would, I think we could fold into the Green New Deal is Medicare for All. I know that we have talked about that a lot here in California, and I think, again, we continue to see how this pandemic is panning out and how important all of our health is and how interconnected we are as communities. I think it's important that if people feel ill, that they're able to seek medical care. And I think we see that, having healthcare tied to employment is ridiculous. About 20% of our small businesses are failing right now. Depending on, let's just say all small businesses employ equal number of people, which is not true, I know, but considering it's like 50% of the workforce with 20%, looking to close, we're looking at 10% of California's workforce being unemployed and most likely without healthcare as well. So, there's so many things that we need to look at, but ultimately the pandemic has given us an opportunity to really rebuild the structure that we see in our state and really focus on putting our money, our tax dollars, our money, because we're the taxpayers, putting our money to where our values are, putting our money to the environment, putting our money to healthcare, putting our money to education, and putting our money to, equity in all of our infrastructure. So those are some things that I've been working on, we've been looking at as a team, and I hope that you guys will support me for state assembly, no matter where you are in the state of California, because I believe that, the economic road to recovery includes all of these things. So again, thank you for your time. Liz Lavertu for state assembly.
All right, and next we're going to go to Shaul Rosen-Rager. Did I say it correctly? Oh, you're muted. There we go.
Here I am. Hey, thank you so much. So my name is Shaul, and I'm here, although I personally support many of the things I heard here today. I'm here today representing an organization called Citizens Climate Lobby. It's a national organization that has local chapters. CCL, in short, has 580 chapters nationwide. Some of them are in other countries as well. And the reason I decided to become active in CCL, and by becoming active, I mean we started a new chapter here in the 42nd Congressional District. We're currently focused on southwest part of the district, but we intend to grow north and cover the whole district and get closer to our current congressional office. So the reason I decided to be involved in Citizens Climate Lobby is that it is a really well-organized group. They have a very narrow focus, which is putting a price on carbon. And the reason it's so focused is because putting a price on carbon is it's not a complete solution to our climate issues, but it's sort of a keystone element that if we can get that, then other things are likely to fall into place. I also want to emphasize that Citizens Climate Lobby strives to be a bipartisan organization. If you look at the co-sponsors of its legislation and at its membership, you realize that it's not a bipartisan organization, but I mean, it's heavily skewed Democratic. But the legislation, which I will talk about, HR 763, which is the bill that's now in Congress, was written and designed to be bipartisan, which means it's not, Democrats don't like it, Republicans don't always like it, but it's sort of a compromise bill that people can agree on. So let me share my screen. So we are going to, according to HR 763, we're going to put a fee on fossil fuels where they come out of the ground, whether it's the oil well, the coal mine, the gas well. All that money is going to be collected and then returned back to the citizens. Return back, meaning everybody gets an equal share. So adults get a share, children under 19 get half a share. And the idea behind this is that the transition, as the economy transitions away from fossil fuels, it will make life more expensive. And to help people, especially middle class and below, with that transition, that money is returned to households, and people get to decide how to spend this money, whether they want to keep buying the old technologies that are going to get gradually more expensive, or they're going to choose other technologies. Let's see my screen just a second. Yeah. There's a few other elements. One of them is carbon border adjustment, which means it's designed to make it fair for local industries when, for example, manufacturing cars in this country becomes more expensive because it's carbon intensive. Then a similar adjustment would be put on cars that are imported to this country. There's also a regulatory adjustment, which means that while this bill is in effect, there will be no other bills that will regulate carbon, but there can be any number of other environmental bills. What I like about this Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act is that it's effective, it's good for regular people, it's good for the economy, it's bipartisan, and it's revenue neutral. And I'll talk a little bit about these. By effective, we're looking at starting at $15 per ton of CO2 equivalent, which is different for every fuel, of course. And it will rise by $10 every year. So in the first 12 years, we're going to see a reduction of emissions by 40%. Families will get paid as this transition happens. The higher the fee goes every year, the more families get paid, and they get to decide how to use this money. And we've seen that when the government wants to, it can actually move money into the hands of real people. If we start cutting the use of fossil fuels, of course, we'll see a healthier environment, and we're looking at saving hundreds of thousands of lives just because we're going to clean up the air. Creation of jobs is expected whenever we transition into new technologies, but also when we put all this money into the hands of regular people, they're going to spend it. So that's going to create boost the economy quite a bit. Republicans especially like the fact that the government is not going to keep any of these fees. So there's no increase in the size of government. And yes, it's a bipartisan bill, which means for me that no matter what happens in government, once it's a bipartisan bill is passed, it's going to stay there. It's solid into the future. This is a list of the sponsors as of maybe a year ago. There's a few others who joined. As you can see, most of them have a D in front of their names. There's, I think there was one Republican currently. It's been very hard for Republicans to stand behind any climate issues in this era of Trump. And what we're doing locally is building the political will to act on climate. And what does it look like? I will talk in a little bit. I just wanted to share with you our website where you can get more information, or you can just look up Citizens Climate Lobby and it will come up. And this is my contact information if you want more information. So I'll stop sharing my screen and talk a little bit about what we're doing locally. We have currently 140 members in our chapter. Not all of them are super active, but there's a good core group of about 20-some people that are very active. And we're doing outreach in the community. We're talking with people about climate. We're also meeting with our congressional office. We are trying to recruit businesses to support this bill and make our voice stronger. We had we're also learning how to speak about climate with conservatives, with Republicans, which is means learning different language, respecting different values, but it's something we think that we need to learn how to do because of the fact that climate has been so politicized. So that's about it. Citizens Climate Lobby.
All right, so thank you very much, Shaul. And I apologize for butchering your name terribly. I really apologize. So let's get to a couple of questions. Let's start with something that's really, really close to home in the Inland Empire, and that people have very, very strong feelings about. Let's talk about the warehousing and the truck presence. So, and this may play very strongly into some of the carbon exchange activity you're talking about, Shaul. But so we have a lot of people from other places saying that, you know, this is like the new boom and the new thing that we're going to do in the Inland Empire, versus we have a lot of children with health problems in the Inland Empire from warehousing, from the predominance of trucks and all these issues. Can I have a couple of thoughts from all of you, as well as thoughts on the jobs they produce and whether this is a good direction for us to be going into?
Well, as a quick one, I've addressed before the fact that all these jobs are going to be automated away anyway. So it's not a sustainable direction for our economy, period. Every one of those factories is going to be fully automated. You're going to have a dog and a guy to feed the dog, and everything else is just going to be run by robots. Same with the trucks. We're already getting to self-driving trucks. All of those jobs are also going to disappear. So it gets back to, on the one hand, a need to push for innovation in the construction of these things in the first place, so the factories themselves are carbon neutral, so that they're driven by renewable energy sources and that they're energy efficient, and also spurring more investment here in the truck technology itself, so that they're also driven by renewables, you know, electric engines and whatnot, because again of the pollution. as far as the economic issues, we're going to have to keep talking about that overall because, again, yeah, this is not going to help our economy.
I think too, we need to focus on a lot of the warehouse jobs don't pay a livable wage, you know, so what good are they for our community if the people working there need to have a second or third job? You know, what good for our community is it with these heavy trucks going in and out to where we need to pay additional tax dollars for our roads to be fixed? What good is it to our community when the air quality is lessened by these multiple trips in these warehouses? You know, we need to, these companies are literally making billions of dollars off the back of our working people, and we really need to start taxing them properly and focusing on, you know, getting them to, you know, a greener zero emissions production future, and ensuring that that money, you know, if you're not paying your people a livable wage, I think there should be a tax for that too, you know. You know, we the taxpayers end up paying, you know, for, you know, the government programs to give a hand up when corporations are not willing to pay a livable wage, and I think that that's backwards. You know, I really think that, and I'm with Liam, I'm scared too, because what happens with automation, you know, with going to an automated future, you know, we've talked about how taxing, you know, automation, you know, would be able to help the people too, but I don't know what purpose, like what positive purpose these warehouses offer to the community, but I think that we need to work with these businesses to ensure that they are a good fit for us too.
Thank you so much. List for assembly right there. Why are we giving massive tax breaks to companies that are not going to provide actual jobs in our community, and that we have to pay for all the extra infrastructure wear from all the trucks? They need to be paying their own share.
And I want to specifically highlight one company in particular, Amazon, who is responsible for the majority of warehouses in the IE. So many people don't know that the IE is actually home to Amazon's largest like regional concentration of logistics warehouses. They have 14 fulfillment centers, and like over 18,000 of our residents are working in these warehouses. So I want to echo what Liz said of like, first off, these are dead-end jobs. Like, they are not careers. They're not being paid livable wages. And I also want to recognize that these warehouses are being built in lower income areas. So I'm in Rancho Cucamonga. I don't have a freaking Amazon warehouse down the street. But if you go to San Bernardino or even Fontana, you do. And so what happens is you have disproportionately Black, brown, and other people of color living, having, you know, their children are going to schools that are right next to these warehouses, which is just not only is it, you know, creating all of this pollution in our areas, but it's also sort of like being concentrated and being targeting specific people. And we can't pretend like that's not on purpose, right? They're doing it to communities. And by doing that, they're essentially saying that these communities don't matter. I want to give a quick shout out to a couple organizations, CCAEJ and a coalition called San Bernardino Airport Communities, who is working really, really hard to ensure there isn't an expansion of the San Bernardino Airport for Amazon. And if there is, there's a community benefits agreement, which is, I'm not going to be able to summarize all of it right now, but I highly recommend just Googling San Bernardino Airport Communities. There's a list of demands that basically state if you're going to expand the airport, you need to be protecting our communities because we've just been exploited for too long.
Ditto to everything that everyone said. I just want to add that many of these warehouses, and Richmond has a lot of them and some in the pipeline as well. A lot of them are very much near modes of transportation. And we have, in Richmond, we have a port and we have railroads and of course multiple freeways. And we need to green our ports for one thing, you know, we need to electrify them because so much particulate matter comes off of the ships, and you know they keep them running unless they are electrified when they pull into the port, and they have some way to connect up so that they don't keep the fossil fuel motors running. So we really need to make sure, and of course the Port of Oakland, which is much bigger than the Port of Richmond, has a lot of particulate matter that the community deals with. So we really need to work together to make sure that we green our modes of transportation and protect the community. We have a diverse community, and they're often the ones in these warehouse jobs, as has been said, and living around the port and living around railroads and such, and freeways where they get even more particulate matter. So we need to really care for these marginalized communities and change the way this infrastructure exists.
So yeah, absolutely. Thank you for those thoughts, everyone. I mean, the only thing I would personally like to add to that is that we have this assumption that our young people are a renewable resource. I live in one of the areas in Riverside County where we have the largest concentration of educated young Black people in the country, and we have this massive expanse of Amazon employees. If someone is 18 and their only opportunity is fast food or Amazon, they're never going to realize their potential because those are their only opportunities. So we're going to go from there to something that we heard very early on in introductions that affects each and every one of our communities, and we don't talk enough about refineries. We specifically heard about oil refineries in Richmond. We also have problems that we've had for a number of years in San Bernardino and other communities, but refineries, and that was with gas refineries, that are in and around our communities. Can we have some thoughts about how this is affecting our health and how we need to address this?
Yeah. Well, let me just jump in right away and say Richmond has among the highest. I know others have mentioned, how the rates of asthma are so high for people living around refineries and other plants that are emitting greenhouse gas emissions and co-pollutants. People have to remember, it's not just these greenhouse gas emissions that come out of the smokestacks that harm our planet and harm our atmosphere, but it's also co-pollutants that people breathe in the vicinity in a major way every day. So we have among the highest rates of asthma in the state, and other respiratory diseases, as well as cancers and heart disease. The stress of living in the shadow of an oil refinery, and that image for a city really takes a toll on people. So yeah, I think the health impact of living around industrial plants is something that has to be known, just generally, and people need to say, hey, this is not good enough. This is not right for our communities, or for communities, even if you live in the suburbs. You got to show understanding that our community is our community. We live in a world where we all belong, and we have to change things so that our community can breathe. And you can't, and we have like flaring that happens at the refinery. And what are people supposed to hold their breath when you have some sort of incident that goes on for an hour or longer? And we had a major fire in Richmond and at the refinery. And in 2012, where thousands of people went to the hospital for respiratory ailments. So I would just say, got to decommission those refineries a little at a time and make it happen for the health of our community.
Yeah, I grew up in Long Beach, and my father worked in the port, and my early job was in the port, and I don't think it's a coincidence that I'm severely asthmatic and that a lot of people that I grew up with are asthmatic. I mean, this did not used to be as common as it is. And it's not just some magical thing. It's not some weird commie conspiracy in the water. It's what we're doing to ourselves. It's what we're pumping into the air around us. And our children are breathing this. It is no surprise that people who come from poorer cities are far less healthy. It is because of what we're doing to them and the way where we are locating these plants in the first place. And that absolutely is a problem. And again, to me, that's just a good incentive to, like, I don't know, move to renewable energy so we can start shutting these things down. Why do we still have coal plants running and oil plants running for electricity at this point? It's not necessary.
I missed the question because my computer was doing fun things, but I think from some of the answers, I understand it a little bit. In Spring Valley, where I live, back in the 1950s during World War II, the county decided to rezone a lot of our community into M54s, which is heavy industrial, buildings, to where in M54s you can literally build bombs in them. That is the level of that they're allowed to work in. And these M54 zones are still in the community, along with M52s, which are, you can do everything but build a bomb in them. But they're literally right next to residential. So there is a mobile home community like 500 feet away from where somebody could come in and start doing heavy industrial manufacturing. Our town is set up like a child's first time building a sim city, with residential right next to manufacturing and scattered throughout the whole community. And and Spring Valley is an underserved community, and I believe they wouldn't do that to La Jolla, here in San Diego. They wouldn't do that to Poway or Scripps Ranch. You would never see them putting in different zoning regulations next to residential there. So I feel like, and a lot of us don't have time to fight the government on these things, and that's why they do it, because we are working 2-3 jobs just to survive, because we are too tired at the end of the day half of the time to even make dinner, that we just pick up fast food because the kids need to be fed, and we don't have time to show up at these meetings at the county that happen on a weekday in the morning because we're at work, so a lot of times our voices are not heard in government planning when it comes to our communities because we're too busy, and they know it.
Absolutely. So we have a question coming in from Twitch that we'll go to, and this should be a pretty quick one because I think we know a couple of the answers already. But we want to know from our candidates, do you support a carbon tax?
To me, yes, I do, just because it actually is what a lot of business has been asking for a long time. They know this stuff is coming. There's tons of uncertainty in the markets when you're constantly messing back and forth with fuel efficiency standards and everything else. And sometimes you're pretending this is a real problem, and sometimes you're not. No one really knows where we're going to go. They can't plan long term. If we lay this out and we lay out the real costs of this, businesses can prepare for it. They can make the investments that are necessary to transition without it actually hurting them. And there, again, this is a related issue to the whole question that Liz brought up with the impact of transport on our physical infrastructure. There is a ton of ripple effects from the pollution here that we're doing here. And the people doing this should be paying some back in for it. The tons of health problems, where does that get counted in? We're just supposed to like, oh, sorry, your kids all got sick, tough shit or something. No, if the businesses have to pay for the costs to society of what they've been doing, then they know to transition away from those harmful practices. But if you don't fairly price it, they have no real incentive to do it. The way things are supposed to work is that business and the government are supposed to work together, not one or the other. They're supposed to work in lockstep. The state can provide a certain justification for it. This is what we want, and then you can plan for it and still find a way to make money. We have to lay out those requirements again.
I would say that I'm very focused, and I think you were focusing a lot on this, Liam, on putting the taxation and putting the pressure for bringing in revenue on the fossil fuel industry, on the wealthy, on big corporations. I think that I know some of the carbon tax ideas are such that, you know, everybody pays it, and there is some like a refund coming back at the end of the year and such. So I'm open to hearing more about that. But I know there's been this debate about, you know, who pays, and is it a market solution, or is it something that we really want in terms of a progressive taxation on those who caused the problem? And that's where my main focus is, on those that have caused the problem, and they need to be paying the highest amount to resolve it.
Okay, so we have a question on Twitch that feeds into kind of a greater question that we have. So I'll start with Twitch, and then I'll kind of feed a little bit into that. This will be our last question of the day, but it's kind of a big one. So the question is, in terms of policy, the writer writes, I am worried about ideas like the Green New Deal. I am not a liberal Democrat. I grew up in the Nixon and Ford years and have seen my party change from conservative ideals and moderate ideas to more liberal ideas. My question is, how do your policies and beliefs help a conservative Democrat like myself support these new ideas? And I will add to that another little part. What do you see as the core components of a Green New Deal, in your view, that connects with not just them, but all of these voters? Is right, we've got this idea of what a Green New Deal encapsulates, but I don't know that we've done a great job of translating what that really is and what it really means for everyone. So let's do a little bit of translation and connection.
Yeah,
who wants to go first?
You can go, Liam. That's right.
I saw Kylie, and then I saw Liam.
why don't you go first, Kylie?
Okay. I definitely want to address that second part of sort of that translation of the Green New Deal. So what I like to say is a Green New Deal is not a policy, it's a vision. Vision for what our world could look like. Of course, in my opinion, it's sort of what the world should look like, right? And what we need to do to have a planet, because we're truly running out of time. But because it's a vision, it's going to take communities working together to decide what it's going to look like. So a Green New Deal for the Inland Empire is and should look different than what the Green New Deal is going to look like in Chicago, you know, or Alaska. And that's a really vital part of thinking about that translation of the Green New Deal is like, quite frankly, we don't know yet. And we really need the community to be coming together and forming that, because nobody knows better than you and whoever is in your community, like what your community needs. So that's sort of what I like to think about in terms of the transition.
Yeah, I have two ways of approaching this, one of which is to recognize what we have to do in terms of the arguments themselves, how we can better articulate and translate this for people. And another that just comes up from being a historian, because if we think back to what both Democrats and Republicans were doing in the 40s, 50s, 60s, into the 70s, both parties were willing to invest in Americans. I mean, they just were. We spent a lot more money actually building up infrastructure in this country, building up education in this country. I mean, you talk about like the Nixon and Ford years. I mean, just before that, Johnson's War on Poverty, which ran into the Nixon and Ford years and literally lowered the national poverty rate by 10%. And Nixon himself was elected talking about not only, I mean, environmental issues and created the EPA, but talking about a universal basic income and healthcare for all, and originally based on the British model of actually government-run healthcare, which no one talks about today. I mean, Medicare for all is nothing like the National Health Service. So both parties actually used to be a lot more liberal than they are now, and we tend to forget that because since the Reagan years, we have gotten much more regressive in our language in both parties. And we've given up a lot of these bold visions and about talking about what we can do really for Americans. So I think what I try to do in talking about these is to remind people of that. And especially both for Democrats and Republicans, this works too. If you want to talk about, you know, the good life that we created for the boomer generation, or you want to talk about the whole make America great again stuff, okay, cool. I hear your phrase, let's make America great again. Let's look at the policies being pursued in the 50s and 60s. They are nothing like anything being proposed in the mainstream of both parties today. And I think we need to get back to talking about what actually worked to build a thriving middle-class society and the way that that investment could help all of us.
And I'll just make this short because I know that we're running a little bit over, but if we went back to, that era of the 70s, and with looking at the corporate tax rates and corporate profits, where they were at, if we got back to that now, we would have enough money to do all this stuff without cutting budgets from any other department. So you know what? I mean, going back to those years with those taxes, I would be completely on board to ensure that we have a future for our children.
Let me just say quickly, well said, Liz. It's clear that corporations used to pay something like 90% of their profits in taxation. Now, many of them pay zero. There's all these loopholes and such. So I think that's true, something for Republicans to look at. You know, we need this economic recovery, and let's go back to where it used to be, where corporations pay their fair share and everyone can thrive.
Shaul, do you have any thoughts on the subject?
No, I'm not. I don't think I can contribute anything specific to the Green New Deal. I would like to see say that carbon pricing needs to be part of whatever we do, because it's just fair. I think it's just fair that if you pollute, you pay for it. When you go to the dump, you pay for the maintenance of the dump, for the different expenses, and our atmosphere should not be free for all. You know, if you put stuff in the atmosphere, you should pay for it. Simple as that.
And again, to remind people, the Green New Deal is a framework. Kylie said that very well. It's aspirational. This is like where we want to go, not an actual set of bills. For all of them, we have to find ways to do it. And when we talk about a movement to all renewables in terms of generation or everything else, that's where a carbon tax is actually useful. Right? It's basically part of an overall, the overall framework. And it's one that we can absolutely get at because there are good arguments from both right and left for it.
Yeah, I think I also really agree with Kylie. I mean, if it's like where the place I grew up in, it looks a little bit more like reducing pesticides emissions so that we can lower asthma rates for children and lengthen their lifetime. If it looks like the community I live in now, we have to focus a lot more on particulate matters and trucks and produce some better jobs. Just depends on the community that you're in. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do a little bit of a closing. If you have any information you would like to share with everyone, this is a perfect time to do it. So we're going to start with exactly the opposite order. We're going to start with Shaul, and then Liz will be next, and then we'll have a few more.
Just short, I would like to invite everybody who's watching this, everybody who's in the 42nd Congressional District, to check out Citizens Climate Lobby. I know there are probably not a lot of Republicans watching this, but we need Democrats, we need everybody on board. Climate is should not be a dividing issue. It should be an issue that we're all standing behind, and because it's going to affect all of us, just like COVID-19 is affecting all of us. We should not be divided over this.
And we'll go to Liz, then Gayle.
Hi, again, Liz Lavertu for California State Assembly District 71, which is East County, San Diego, and the southwest part of Riverside County. In closing, I just want to say, I want to bring the American dream back again. I want to bring the California dream back again. We really just need to focus on our communities and our people. If we look at how corporations and how the super wealthy have been profiting off of us and profiting off of our hardships, you know, we really need to focus and put an end to that. California has 161 billionaires. So there's 161 people who live in California who are billionaires. And since COVID, they've actually increased their wealth by $180 billion. Well, most of us are not in as great of a financial situation as we were going into the pandemic. So, you know, we need to focus on, you know, corporations like Amazon and Walmart and, you know, these billionaires paying their fair share of taxes in our state, so that when we implement all these programs, it doesn't affect us working people. You know, our taxes can stay the same because we're living paycheck to paycheck, or we're working past our retirement years to ensure that we have a stable future in our older age. You know, we're the ones like really needing to make sacrifices while they buy their second or third yacht, you know, while they get their vacation home in another country. We really just need our focus to be on ensuring that everybody in our state, that we have equity in education, equity in the environment, that we're getting paid livable, thriving wages, and that our labor is actually valued. And we need to put a better price tag on our labor. Thank you.
And again, my name is Gayle McLaughlin, and I'm running for Richmond City Council, District 5. My website is gayleforrichmond.org, GAYLEFOR, richmond.org. And we are a very diverse community in the district and in Richmond at large. And we're a community that has struggled for decades with health problems and economic problems, predominantly due to this big refinery, the Chevron refinery, and other industrial sites. And that has caused, in addition to health problems, economic problems. Businesses don't always want to relocate to, you know, areas that have refinery incidents periodically, and you know, we can understand that, but we're in a new day in Richmond. We're promoting a new vision, and we've gotten a lot of national attention for being a city that has transformed itself quite a bit already, but we need to strengthen that transformation. And if people will go to my website, they'll learn more about me. If you could donate, or if you'll endorse me, I'm happy to receive the endorsements of anyone from throughout the state or nation. I mean, we want to bring people together, and we in Richmond will be continuing to stand on the front lines of a Green New Deal and for decommissioning refineries and for building with youth. I want to mention youth, how important it is, especially with Kylie on here, the kind of world that is sustainable for ourselves and our youth of today, but also for generations to come.
So first off,
Right. Kylie, and then Liam gets the last word for today.
So first off, I just want to say thank you so much for listening today and for having me. If you're interested in getting involved with Sunrise Rancho Cucamonga, you can find us on pretty much all social media platforms. So Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. You can feel free to reach out to us at sunriseranchocucamonga@gmail.com. And if you're not around Rancho Cucamonga, I really encourage you to just Google Sunrise Movement and see if there is a hub near you. So there's over 200 hubs nationwide. And if you still find that there isn't a hub near you, or you don't really want to be doing what the hub near you is participating in for whatever reason, start your own. That's what myself and my co-coordinator did. And it's been, awesome. And we're already seeing some really positive change. So again, Sunrise Rancho Cucamonga. Thank you.
Awesome. And our last speaker for today is Liam O'Mara.
Yeah, I'd like to thank all of our great guests. This was fantastic. I know we ran a little over, but this is a big topic and an extremely important one. So I want to thank you all for watching and for everyone who contributed to this. Obviously, I already support Liz here, but Gayle, to answer your question, I always love hearing you speak. You've got my fantastic support for this. Okay, so I want to end with just a simple historian's observation, I guess. We have been taught over the last few decades to lower our expectations as Americans. This has been deliberate, and they've lowered our expectations both for our quality of life as well as what we can expect to get out of the political process in the first place. And this has been deliberate. It is the reason for so much of the deregulation that was pushed through, which allowed these massive conglomerates to take over our media and to get us thinking, you know, this is fine. This is fine. I don't need to change anything here. Let there be more and more billionaires and not have to worry about, you know what? My kids are being impacted by this, and we should care more. And we should definitely expect a lot more from our politicians. Our incumbent in the 42nd is bought and sold by corporate interests. 98% of his money comes from corporate interests. He listens to them. He serves them, not us. There's a reason he does not answer your questions. There's a reason he hangs up on voters. There's a reason he won't do town halls. He doesn't represent you. We need to demand more from government, and we need to start dreaming again as a society. So again, I'm Liam O'Mara. I'm running in the 42nd. My website is liamomara.org. I'm super active on social media, pretty easy to find, and I hope I can get your support.
And thank you, Tisa, for moderating. I'm glad that you're back.
Thank you for having me. This is one of my favorite things to talk about, you guys. You don't even know. We have to save our planet. We have so much work to do. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Next Saturday, July 25th, we're going to be talking with economist Fadhel Kaboul, and we'll be talking about modern monetary theory and creating a people's economy. You do not want to miss this. It's going to be incredible. Going to be really exciting, and you want to really make sure pay attention, because this is the bread and butter, guys, literally. All right, thank you, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.